Hey guys. Okay, so this live is for you guys if you have a puppy, like really young puppy, up to about 2 years old. So we're going to be talking kind of about um, the life stages and kind of the process that a puppy goes through as they age and grow, and kind of the behaviors that we see during this developmental stage. So I'm going to wait for a few people to jump on. It's been cold. Are you guys surviving the weather? It's been wild. How are your dogs handling it? Some dogs will not go outside in the freezing cold, and some will. It kind of cracks me up a little bit on which dogs will and which won't. So if you, I'm going to actually make sure that people can see me. But I'm really, really, really excited about the topic tonight. Thanks so much for jumping on and really allowing me to have the opportunity to teach this way. It's been really nice to have the opportunity to chat with you guys. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the right page, and then we will get started. There's a lot to cover. Lots to cover. So I'm going to assume that I'm in the right place. Okay, so we're going to talk about puppy life stages. So what happens in that first 16 weeks of life with that puppy kind of set them up for what's going on in their life. So birth to 13 is just 13 days is really just them eating, sleeping, staying warm, and repeating. They're really not doing much other than getting that care from mom. It just really sets a good solid foundation that they don't have to do anything and they're being taken care of. And then we hit this transitional period, which is like about 13 days or whenever their eyes open till about 20 days. So their eyes are going to open at the end, their ears are going to open up, and they're going to be able to hear. They're going to start walking, they're going to start chewing, and their smell starts to get really, really refined, and they start actually looking like little puppies. During this time, they're really just kind of getting all those really important things that they need during that time frame. They're still really, really reliant on mom, and they're kind of just in their own little world. And then about week 4 through week 12 is when we're in this socialization period, and this is when they actually start playing with each other, and they're kind of really learning how to interact and socialize with other dogs. So between week 4 and 6 is like the most important time that we can socialize our dogs with other dogs, and that is their mom and their siblings usually. So if we remove a puppy before that, they're going to really miss out on really important social behaviors in the dog world. So that time with mom and the siblings allow dogs to learn how to make a social bond. So when they're out interacting with other dogs, if we left mom too early, we didn't have enough time with their siblings, they're going to find it really difficult to know how to interact with other dogs. So this piece of the puppy picture is so important, especially if you find that your dog is having trouble with other dogs. Usually when someone comes with aggression or reactivity or things like that, my first question is, how old was your puppy when you brought them home? Because that can give me a lot of information to kind of know what we might be working with. Is this because we missed the socialization piece, or is it because of something else? So knowing kind of what is important in this little time frame can really help us down the road if we're running into issues. But that socialization period is really, really important. And then we get this nice little overlap. So around week 5 to 12 weeks, this is when they need to be socialized with humans as well. So the very beginning, it's just really important that they're socialized with other dogs, and that's just really their siblings and, mom. And then in week 5, we're really starting to add in the people. And during this time period, they are being socialized, sounds, smells, different textures that they're going to walk on, and lots of different learning experiences. This is really going to set them up for success in life during this socialization period. So during this socialization period, like right when we bring them home around 8 weeks, that's when we start seeing the first fear stage. So they go through about 4 fear stages, and I talked about this in our resocialization live, but around 8 to 10 weeks, you're going to start seeing this fear stage. And it's so important that we're still socializing during it, but we have to be really cautious that we aren't pushing too hard, especially if they're really nervous. So in those fear stages, we're not pushing them to go say hello to people, we're not dragging them up to things that they don't want to see. We're really kind of just supporting them in socializing at a distance, which is really, really important anyways. And then around 10 to 12 weeks, they're home, they're kind of getting to know us, and these are your final last 2 weeks of that prime socialization period. I tell people that they've got till about 16 weeks to get the socialization in, but these last 2 weeks, they're really starting to become like adults. They're like little adults running around, and you really get to see their personality. And this starts to shift about 12 weeks to 13 weeks. So most times during this 8 to 12 week period, the puppies are coming when we call, and they're just following us around because they just want to be with us. And we start transitioning into our juvenile period, or the teenage phases, or adolescence, whatever you want to call it. And this goes from 12 weeks to sexual maturity. And that can be between 6 months to a year to 2 years, depending on the size of your dog. So usually the smaller the dog, the sooner they reach that sexual maturity. And so when we hit that 12 to 13 week, our dogs become little teenagers, and they find free will, and they're going to start pushing buttons, and they're going to start pushing boundaries. So in my puppy class, I tell people, like, be ready for week 12. You're not doing anything wrong, but it's going to feel like you're not doing enough, because when we hit that 12-week mark, these puppies go from I come when you call to, like, maybe they'll look at you and then they're like, no, or they'll just completely blow you off, ignore you. It's just the way it goes as far as puppy goes. So this is really where I want to focus, is between the 12-week and ending that adolescence period, because this is where I tend to see puppies rehomed, older dogs rehomed, because we're moving into these like teenage phases that don't make a lot of sense. My dog was doing great, and what just happened? They don't know anything, and they get more kind of out of control. So once we hit that 12-week mark, they get that free will. Around between 12 to 14 weeks is like that first teenage stage, and it is not a fun time frame at all. But as we move into like 16 to 24 weeks, you're going to start seeing another fear stage. So you're going to be going through that juvenile or adolescence period in addition to those fear stages. So if you're out moving around, walking your dog, especially as you move into that 16 to 24 week, and they're totally fine with whatever, like park benches and trash cans and things like that, never had a problem. And then all of a sudden they're like really nervous. We're in that fear stage. So it's something that is common, and I just don't feel like it's ever talked about. I did not know that until I became a trainer 10 years ago, that puppies go through fear stages and all that fun stuff. And so you sometimes get like, oh, my dog is really cautious and really nervous, and they weren't like last week. What's going on? So just having that fear stage in mind when you bring your puppy home can be incredibly helpful. They do go through 4 fear stages. So I just want to go over those So like 8 to 10 weeks, and then we're going to see it around 4 to 6 months, around 9 months, and then about 14 to 18 months, you'll see another one. So they get really nervous about things that they've never been nervous about before. So when you get there, reach out if you need help, but it is a normal time. So when we hit this juvenile phase, we're going to see mouthing become really, really, really big. That's something that you will, they're mouthing and nibbling and things like that from that 8 weeks old to 12 weeks. But when we hit 12 weeks, they're getting that free will. They're knowing that they don't really have to do things anymore. And you'll start seeing that mouthing become huge. Not only the mouthing, but they're going to be starting to teeth. They're going to start chewing all sorts of things. And it really comes down to during these this juvenile phase is a lot of management, a lot of structure, a lot of routine, and a lot of patience. They will start like pulling and lunging on those leashes. They're going to be jumping more. They just get like this overexcitedness that they didn't have before. And then they're starting to get bigger. So we've got this, a 4-month-old puppy now that is starting to get uncontrollably excited. But then we're starting to add in the size as well. So they start becoming like little pests, and they come and they just like bug you all the time. And that's not a bad thing, but we start seeing those things start popping up right about 12 weeks. And I usually see it from month 3 to month 4 where it is the most pronounced. And then we kind of get better. And then you're going to see it again when we hit another teenage stage. So you're like in teenage world through about 2 years, but 3 to 4 months is usually the first stage that you hit, and it is hard, and we're really just falling back on that structure and routine that we've set up with them as puppies. So as they move into that adolescence phase, patience is needed 100%, but training is necessary. This is really where you're going to, you're still going to get frustrated because it's going to be hard, but we've got that routine and structures 3 to 4 months, and then you're going to move into obedience training and that type of things, and that's going to really help. So we are still going to really see that frustration. You're going to feel frustrated, and here's where I kind of find they move into teenage phase. So if you have trained your dog and they're doing really, really well, and then all of a sudden it's like you say sit and they're like blank stare and they're like, I don't know what sit means. I don't know what any of this means. That's typically kind of like we're moving into this new developmental phase. So typically I see these like 3 to 4 months, and I see it around 7 to 8 months again, and then about 1.5 years. That's not always exactly on, and they're in that phase the whole time. But those are the more pronounced time frames that I see people get really frustrated and really concerned about what's going on, because the dog was doing great and now they've like lost everything, and you've got to kind of reset them up, and you're going to lose it again. And it is a really frustrating time and a really frustrating process. And honestly, when I start seeing dogs rehomed, it usually is around 3 months when the puppy starts kind of going crazy. And then about 7 to 8 months, they're getting a lot bigger. And so that teenage stage feels a lot bigger because the dog is out of control or feels out of control, and they can jump on people and it hurts. And so we start seeing that around 7, 8 months. And what I consistently see is people go, they were doing great and we've just lost everything and I don't know what to do with them. And so when we don't even know that this is what's going on in our world, it makes it really hard to kind of go, well, yeah, I guess I could, this just isn't working. They were doing great and something's wrong and it's not working anymore. So when we kind of understand that we're running into these teenage stages, we know it's just like you hit it 7 to 8 months and it's hard. You're going to start buckling down, being consistent. You're going to ride it out for a month. That's usually how long it takes. You can have a really well-behaved puppy. However, you are going to run into those teenage stages and it's going to get rough. So training during this time is essential. Here are the things that I highly recommend when you hit those teenage stages. Staying consistent with that training, but doing the sit on the dog exercise. If you've been through puppy class, doing that leadership exercise, we're really wanting to encourage that settle command because that can be really helpful when they start kind of amping up. I do so much brain work during the adolescence phase. This should be like one of the top things we're doing is we're making sure we're getting that exercise in physically, but more so that brain work because they are going to have a lot of energy to expend. And if it's not being expended in the right way, they are going to jump more and they're going to mouth more and all those type of things. So we're staying consistent with all the things that we did in puppyhood, but we're now going to make sure we are for sure doing brain work. We are for sure getting that physical exercise because that will make the biggest difference in your life when you hit adolescence with your dog. A settle command, a place command is also really helpful. So, or, a really solid kennel command. So when you're going crazy and they're making you just like out of control, like wild, you can send them to their kennel or you can send them to their spot, and it can be really helpful because, it can get really overwhelming, especially if they're in your face and they're demanding attention constantly. And that's what we do see in this adolescence phase. We had a question, can you elaborate on the brain work? So brain work is so many different things. Puzzle games are great. There's lots of different ways that you can incorporate it into just even feeding. I have a workshop that I have posted on one of the other guides. I think that Calm Canine guide that I have with that live, I have my workshop and some ideas posted in there, but brain work really is anything that we can do to tire them out. So when I'm doing brain work with my personal dogs, after the activity we've done, I want them to go sleep for a couple of hours. If they go lay down for like a half an hour and then they're up and ready to go, it probably wasn't enough brain work to kind of dissipate that excess energy. If I haven't been doing brain work with my dogs, or even they haven't had a lot of physical exercise because life gets in the way and it happens, we kind of have to find a way to really burn that excess energy off really fast. So getting out there and throwing the ball and letting them run, or like running them on our bike or something like that, where we can burn a lot of energy really fast, can be really helpful. And then you start implementing those brain games and you can see a lot more success than just jumping right into the brain games. You're going to see success jumping in, but again, we really want it to be, we did the brain work and now they go sleep for like 2 hours would be ideal. With the puppies, you might get 45 minutes, but the more brain work you can, and you have to kind of experiment with what works for your dog, because what works for mine isn't going to work for yours. But there's tons and tons and tons of ideas on that. Let me know if you can't find it and I'll go tag you in it. But brain work is one of the best things we can do in adolescence, and really, honestly, getting through puppyhood is rough. You can have really good days, but you're also going to have really bad days. And same with adolescence. I really, really feel like we just don't know enough about like that developmental stage, because they're really like little kids. They are like raising toddlers almost nonstop, but they, you have those times where they're really pushing back and they're really fighting on things. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's like they have whatever it was. They just had to make it through that developmental stage. And it's not fun to have to guide them through it. It really isn't. I have people that I just tell them to message me and vent in my group classes or puppy class, because sometimes all you just need to hear is, yep, it's tough and you're doing what you're supposed to do 100%. You just got to keep at it. It is a consistency game when they hit those teenage stages 100%, because if you have solid obedience skills and then they are like, oh, I forgot them, and you're still asking them to do things and then you're not following through with things, when you hit the next teenage stage, it gets harder. So like 7 to 8 months, that teenage stage, what I'll start seeing is you'll say sit and the dog is like, oh, I can't do it, and they're just like forget everything and we follow through with it. Or if we don't, when we hit that 1.5 year stage, you'll tell the dog to sit and they kind of just flip you off with their eyes. They're like, make me, type of a thing. We really don't want to have that happening. It still might, but if you are consistent during that 7 to 8 month teenage phase, your 1.5 year phase gets a lot easier. So you're going to see your dog testing you left and right. It's really, really frustrating. But I just want people to know it does not mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means that you are in the hard part of puppyhood through adolescence. And honestly, consistency for that, it's usually a month where it's just really, 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 really hard. So I have time for questions. So if you have any questions about puppy stages or you want a little more information here or there, let me know. Or if you have questions outside of kind of the puppy stages, let me know. I have a few more minutes that we can chat. Just really about puppyhood. I'll have the guide that I kind of just went over. I'll post that on the group as well. But we're just... man, it's been a long week and it's only Monday, right? So any questions from anybody? And if you're catching the replay, feel free to go ahead and post it in the comments and I'll get to them. You can let me know what your most frustrating moments are through adolescence. So what's the best way to socialize a 16-month-old that didn't get it as a puppy? There's lots of different things that we can do. I have, one of our lives was on re-socializing a puppy that didn't get that socialization at that point. And then I've posted, I think 4 posts on the group that go through socialization process with just puppies. And when I have a dog that's older than that, even like 16 weeks is like the cutoff. If I'm trying to socialize a dog after that 16 weeks, I am following through on those same things. And then I'm staying on the things that they're struggling with. So if they are struggling with people on my property, we're going to do exposure after exposure after exposure after exposure until it doesn't bother them as much. Type of thing. So you can go and you can grab the things that I have people socialize their puppies to, and you're just going to focus on those with your dog. So you can go through there and you're like, oh, my dog doesn't have a problem with this. Check. Not with this, not with this. You can check those off. I wouldn't worry about them. But the ones that you go, oh, we really do have a problem here. That's where we're going to spend some extra time socializing. So there's I think a re-socialization guide. There's a live training replay on the group with resocialization information, but it really is still getting them out and giving them socialization opportunities, but in safe ways. And sometimes if they're really struggling with things, instead of them, being up near whatever we're trying to socialize to, they're really far away. And then when they're comfortable there, we move closer and closer and closer. So yeah, that would be a great one to watch if you're really struggling with some socialization aspects. And honestly, even if we do socialize really well during that 16-week mark, we still have socialization that we need to be doing with our dogs throughout their life. It's not as urgent or as necessary, but we still have to kind of keep those skills up. That is really, really, really important. So great questions. Any other questions I can answer for you? Kind of just a quick recap for anyone that jumped on. We kind of went through these stages, but the one that I really like to focus on for people is the start of that juvenile period or adolescence. Honestly, 12 to 16 weeks, you're still kind of in puppyhood, but you're in the adolescence. But the biggest change that we see in puppies is that 12 to 13 week mark. And that happens when they start going, oh, I have some free will. I don't have to listen when you call me to come. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And they then from there start getting more rambunctious and excited, and then they get bigger. And so, but that 12 to 13 week mark is when people start going, oh my goodness, what's going on here? I was talking to someone today from my puppy class, and they're like, we don't know what we're doing wrong. And it really, I just had to reassure them that it's really, really hard. I remember doing puppy classes constantly. people would be like, oh, I just don't understand. This is so hard to raise this puppy. And I think I forgot, like my shepherd, she came home at 12 weeks. So we never really got the luxury of her being like, oh, I listened to your happy voice and come to you. She kind of just came home as a little naughty puppy. And then Oakley wasn't too hard. But man, when Skippy came home and she hit 3 months, I was like, what did I do? Like, she by far has been the hardest puppy that I have raised. And it really gave me a lot of empathy for people when they call and they're like, my 3-month-old puppy's doing this. And I go, I know, it is so hard. Can I give you a hug? Because honestly, that's what I wanted with Skippy. So 3 months, you're going to hit that really, really big juvenile period, where they get that first teenage stage, and then you're in and out of them throughout the rest of adolescence. And again, that can look like 6 months for really, really small dogs, a year for the medium, but typically I say you're going to have a puppy or you're going to be an adolescent till they are like 2 years old. So some are lucky, you get another one at 2.5. I just remember like looking at Skippy when she hit 2 and going like, what's different here? What is different? And then I looked at the calendar. I was like, oh my gosh, you're 2. So we move out of that adolescence period, and all of the hard work that you've done throughout adolescence pays off when they hit 2. So, I mean, you're working and you can have a really well-behaved dog, but once they hit that 2 mark, it just kind of falls into place. Things that you've been working on for a long time become habits, and it doesn't feel as big of a fight. It's just making it through those first couple of years that can be really hard, especially if you don't understand why you're running into these issues. So I'm going to pop off unless there are any questions, and then I will post this, the guide here pretty soon. So thanks for jumping on and chatting with me, and those catching the replay, if you have questions, please reach out, let me know. And then anyone that is watching, let us know like your hardest moment in puppyhood, and it can be from a past puppy or like your funniest moment, because sometimes when we're in that like hard phase, like thinking back and going, oh my goodness, when my puppy did this, I was furious, but it was really hilarious. Sometimes that can be really therapeutic. Or if you're stuck right in adolescence and puppyhood, just finding those teeny tiny moments throughout the day where you're just like, oh, my puppy made me laugh instead of like want to scream. Those can be really helpful, especially if you are struggling with bonding and things like that. Just really finding the good things that they're doing, even if it was like, oh, they didn't jump on me once today. Those things, they can be really small, or they may be big celebrations that you're having, but finding those little itty bitty things where you can kind of go, okay, I see the dog my dog can become and my puppy can become, and I'm going to hold on to those little itty bitty moments, because as they go on and you stay consistent, those are going to become bigger and bigger moments, and you're going to see those hard moments kind of fade away. Not forever, but you're going to, I mean, they're not perfect. They're dogs. They're going to push buttons and boundaries. And if you get inconsistent, they're going to go back to like old behaviors. But you're going to start just seeing things kind of flow and move into a really nice kind of just relationship that you really want with your dog. So, okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later, like I just said.